round robin of introductions, just kind of name, location, nothing else for now. We want to keep it to less than 10 minutes because we have a packed agenda. And then after that, we'll do a quick overview of the program. I know a lot of you know a lot about that. Not everyone has the same level of knowledge. We're lucky to have both Jill and Tara from the Capital District Regional Planning Commission. I always get that confused, who are incredible coordinators and assistants in helping to administer this program throughout this region. So hopefully they can jump in and give a quick overview. And then after that, we'll do a discussion of a proposed scope of work, which will be short, 20 minutes, 25 minutes. And then at 10:45, Ron Semp will jump on. He works for Plugin. He's the Director of Commercial Sales with Plugin Stations Online. It's kind of jumping from the big picture into a potential kind of area of focus in the next year to take advantage of funding, looking at EV charging stations in the county. And then some exciting news we're saving for the end, just kind of like a teaser on the sustainability coordinator position, and then we'll talk about the future and moving forward, next steps. Does anyone, 2 questions before we do intros, any questions, additions, objections? And then also, is this being recorded? Can we record it? And is anyone taking notes? If not, I'll take notes.
I am recording this meeting, and also I'm grabbing the transcript from everyone.
And Maureen is taking minutes.
Oh, great. That's
okay.
Huge help. Thank you, Maureen. Okay, so I'm Dave Newman. I live in Ghent. I'm an environmental lawyer on the EMC, and we have a farm. We just started last year, Arthur's Point Farm. John, you go next. I'm just going to call people out because I see them in a certain order on the screen here.
I'm John Bradley from Claverick.
Oswaldo.
I work for MIS. I'm just the IT person.
Great. Istria.
Hi. Tistria Holding, Town Supervisor, Town of New Lebanon, and really excited that we're moving forward with this.
Please.
Hi, I'm Patrice Perry, the Columbia County Planning Department Director.
Maureen. We'll come back to Maureen. Phone number 518, I don't know, last 2 digits 75. Can't see it. Someone on the phone? Can't tell who that is. Okay, we'll skip to Jill.
Good morning, Jill Hank. I live in the town of Westerlo, irrelevant, but outreach coordinator for Capital District Regional Planning Commission.
Bill.
I'm Bill Mancini from the Village of Kinderhook. I'm the chair of the Climate Smart Community Task Force in the village, and I'm just appointed to the EMC for Columbia County.
Steve.
That's me. Steve Powers from New Lebanon. I'm the chair of the CSC in New Lebanon.
Dan Haas. You're muted, Dan.
Dan Haas, COPAC. I'm chair of the Climate Smart Task Force, also with Citizens Climate Lobby, and also co-founder of Friends of Columbia Solar. We're supporting the solar project in COPAC.
Denal.
Denal Collins, Supervisor, Town of Chatham. Nice to meet everyone.
Ron Knott.
Ron Knott, Town Supervisor of the Town of Stuyvesant and Chair of Public Works at the county.
Kara Humphrey.
Hi, Cara Humphrey. I'm in Austerlitz on the Town of Austerlitz Climate Smart Committee and on the county EMC.
Bruce Shanker.
Bruce Shanker from New Lebanon. I'm the EMC rep for New Lebanon, and I'm on the Climate Smart Task Force in New Lebanon as well.
Tara Donadio.
Tara Donadio. I'm the outreach coordinator along with Jill for the Capital District Regional Planning Commission for the NYSERDA Clean Energy Communities Program.
Michael O'Hara. We're just doing quick intros, Michael and Suzanne. Michael. Muted.
Okay, there we go. Okay, Michael O'Hara. I'm the chair of the Environmental Management Council of Columbia County and a member of the City of Hudson Conservation Advisory Council.
And excuse me, we haven't met yet. Is it Susan or Suzanne? Hello.
It's Susan. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Yeah, Susan Flam. I'm the chair of Ancrum's Climate Smart Community Task Force.
Great. I can't see anyone else on my screen, but I feel like there might be some more people. I think, but if anyone else is on, I can't see you, so please.
Terrence from Columbia Land Conservancy is on the call, and so I'm the Agricultural Programs Coordinator, and I'm happy to represent CLC on this course.
Thanks, Terrence.
Hi, Jolene Race, Director of Columbia County Solid Waste.
Great. Anyone else? We have a great group here. Thank you all for joining us. There's a lot of knowledge and experience in the room, a lot of expertise, and this is a great way to start this off. So I sent an agenda which is partly introductory, partly digging into weeds of a couple little things, and a lot of it is planning and forward-looking. So I'll pause just if anyone has any overarching questions or comments before we jump in. Great. So a bunch could do this 5-10 minute overview, but I thought maybe Jill or Tara could do it in a really tight way because they do it all the time, which is introduce and provide an overview of the Climate Smart Communities program. Again, a lot of us know a lot about it. There are folks on the call who I would consider experts, and but nonetheless, we're not all at the same level of knowledge and experience. So I think that would be really helpful. Jill, would you like to do that?
Sure.
Thanks.
Yeah. So it's good to see all of you. A lot of familiar faces, and I know a lot of you are very familiar with this program. So I'm going to keep it pretty general, and I'm going to make some points about the differences between the CEC, Clean Energy Communities Program, and the Climate Smart Communities Program, because those are oftentimes confused. So this is a Climate Smart Communities Task Force. The Climate Smart Communities Program is an interagency program administered by the DEC. I would say compared to the Clean Energy Communities Program, Climate Smart is more of a leadership program. It has over 100 actions. Those actions don't necessarily have grants attached to them. However, they are beneficial for municipalities to complete it of themselves in terms of financial benefits, but more so climate benefits, greenhouse gas emissions benefits, things like that. The Climate Smart Communities Program is more focused on adaptation and resiliency, whereas the Clean Energy Communities Program is very much energy efficiency and renewable energy focused. Both programs and Clean Energy Communities, as you all probably know, is a NYSERDA program, New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. Both programs are intertwined. One is embedded, the Climate Smart Communities Program is embedded within the Clean Energy Communities Program. Tara and I are outreach coordinators for the CEC program, but because they are connected, we are also outreach coordinators for the CSC program. So regardless of which program you have questions on, we are here to assist, as you all probably know. There's a portal. The DEC has a portal for the Climate Smart Communities Program, which has all of the details for each action within that website. In order to become a certified Climate Smart Communities Program, or community, you have to get 120 points. Currently, there are 2 certification levels. There's bronze and there's silver. There's not gold at the moment, but I anticipate that there will be at some point in the near future. 120 points gets you bronze certification, and 300 points gets you silver certification. Those certification periods come around 3 times a year. You're able to submit those actions as you go. Once you reach that point threshold, you can submit them to the DEC for review, and then they will tell you whether or not you've been approved. So as of right now, there is one climate smart community that is certified in Columbia County. That's the town of New Lebanon. They are bronze certified. And I guess I'll stop there because I think those are the basic fundamentals for the program.
Thanks, Jill. We have a bunch of people, practitioners of this kind of work on the call. I don't know if Bill, Steve, or Dan, anyone else wants to add anything from, just at a kind of a high level. And if not, we can just jump right into the scope of work.
David, could I just ask Jill a quick question?
Of course.
Is there any difference that you want to point out between a town process, which we're all very familiar with, and a county process, which is new to us all? Is it basically the same program and the same steps, or is there any differences that you want to line out for us?
Good question. So this has two different answers based on which program we're talking about. For the Climate Smart Communities program, basically no, it's the same application. It's a little trickier because you're working at a larger scale. So for example, and I can talk about this if David wants me to give an update on what we've been working on now or later, but for example, there's quite a few municipal buildings within the county. So it's going to be more difficult to benchmark and keep track of energy use for a portfolio that's larger for a county versus a town. For the Clean Energy Communities program, it is a little bit more difficult for a municipality or a county to move through that program because some of the high impact actions a county is not eligible for. For example, one of the high impact actions is converting your streetlights to LED technology. Oftentimes the municipality, the towns or the villages own the streetlights. And while the county may own a handful of streetlights, because it's not that many, NYSERDA has decided that they are not eligible for that action. The other high impact action in CEC that a county is not eligible for is community choice aggregation. That has to be implemented at the town, city, town, or village level. There's a couple more where it's difficult for a county to get credit for some of the high impact actions, which has an impact if you are moving through the Clean Energy Communities program with the goal of achieving the highest point threshold. So I know I didn't talk about this and I don't have to get into the weeds on it right now, but the grants for the Clean Energy Communities program are achievable by accumulating points through completing high impact actions at a 3,000 point, 4,000 point, and 5,000 point level. Because a county for some of these high impact actions, it's very, very difficult to reach that highest point level. And at this point, quite frankly, it's impossible. This is something that we've brought up to NYSERDA, and they are working on adding new high impact actions that might be more appropriate for counties. But in that sense, the grants aren't as attainable for counties and clean energy communities, but there are still other opportunities to get grants for that program. For example, having a county-wide community solar campaign, something like that, a county is still eligible for.
Hey, Jill, this is Steve. If you don't mind my asking, with that program, then the minimum requirement is only 10 signups. Does that still apply at the county level?
For a large municipality, which the county would qualify as, it's 25 signups. But NYSERDA has thrown counties a bone in this sense, in that as long as the scoping document, in New Lebanon, it might not necessarily apply. But say, for example, the county aligns with another municipality within Columbia County to put scoping documents out at the same time. All of the signups within that town will count towards the county's tally.
So does the county and the town then at that point, would they both qualify for the grant?
Yes.
Wow. So there's some low-hanging fruit right there, which we're getting right into the weeds of one thing, but there are a number of community solar initiatives that are either happening or being planned. It's quite urgent, I think, that we figure out what we need to do at the county level to get the appropriate scoping and coordination with those towns. Would you say that's correct, or am I missing something, Jill?
No, that is correct. The urgency is aligned with the fact that these grants are first come, first serve. And there's a lot of municipalities across the state that are working on this. So the sooner you get going, the better your chance that still be money left when you reach those 25 signups.
And it's a $15,000 grant?
Correct.
Which can be
$15,000 for the county and then $5,000 for the municipality. I believe the county is the only municipality within the county that is large. Everyone else is beneath that threshold.
What is involved in developing the scoping document?
So the scoping document is I believe, a 7-page document that asks questions like, who's your core team? Are you going to, what is your plan for completing this campaign? So it asks you who your partner will be. You don't necessarily, and by partner, I mean, if you decide to go the community solar route, because there are multiple technologies you can do this for, electric vehicles, clean heating, cooling being a couple examples. They'll ask you who your partner is, meaning which community solar company or companies will you partner with. It will ask you what type of advertising you're going to do, what type of events you're going to have. There are some specific questions about the demographics of your municipality. It's fairly simple, and it's something that Tara and I can help complete.
Okay, that's great. Well, we jumped into the weeds there, but there's some urgency and an opportunity, so I think it makes sense. Any other big picture before we shift gears? Big picture comments? It's hard to do that in 10 minutes. Ron.
Yes, I just wanted to say that, the county did a pretty large energy project here, completed just recently, and I have had SmartWatt, the company that did that, working with Jill to actually input all that information into the website there. So I just got the list of county buildings that I was asked for, and I will talk to Jill in the future about getting them over to you. But yeah, we're working on inputting some data for that project.
Yeah, thanks for that update. Ron's being a little modest. There's a lot of data that's required for some of these actions, specifically the PE3 actions that are going to demonstrate energy reduction in municipal buildings. So Tara and myself and our intern Haley had a meeting with Ryan from SmartWatt, who was able to send over some of the documentation demonstrating those energy efficiency upgrades. So we are in the process, and Ron is getting us a inventory basically of all the municipal buildings, and then our intern Haley is going to work on analyzing that data, putting it into a spreadsheet, and figuring out the percentage of energy reduction, and then submitting that into the Climate Smart Communities portal so that the county can get credit for those actions.
And that, thank you, Ron, and everyone for working on that and just taking the ball and running with it. A lot of work went into that project initially, and it's great that we can kind of use that to jump into the Climate Smart program. It also is relevant to potentially to the Clean Energy Communities program, where we could get credit there. And I wonder, I think it's a 10% reduction post January of 2020 that we have to show. Would that be relevant? Do you know offhand?
We just need to make sure that the improvements were made after that date cutoff. But if they were meet those reductions, yes, it could count. There's one more complication in order to demonstrate the communities program, and that is benchmarking. So one of the prerequisites of getting credit for the clean energy upgrades high impact action is to demonstrate your baseline energy use for all of your municipal buildings. So that's definitely something that we can work on, but it's just an extra step in clean energy communities that isn't necessarily required in the CSC program.
You can do that retroactively by looking at old electric bills and whatnot?
Yep.
Okay, great. Okay. Well, I think we should shift gears. We have Ron Semp joining us at 10:45 to talk about EV charging stations and an opportunity there to, I think, have zero to very little investment in expanding our EV network throughout the county. And we'll hear from him in a minute. We have two more people that joined, though, real quick, Wendy and Rael. Could you just give a quick introduction? We just went around before you joined and name, kind of where you're from, affiliation. Thank you.
This is Wendy. Can you hear me? Okay. I'm from Canaan Climate Smart Committee Task Force. And I don't know how to work this particular Zoom type of program, but I'm working on it.
You're doing just fine. I mean, that was pretty good. Mute on and off. The video is also an option, but we can hear you loud and clear. So thanks for joining.
Thank you very much.
Sure. And Rael, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. You might be on mute.
Hi, this is Jody Rail.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jody.
And I'm with Sundog Solar in Chatham. We've been doing this a long time. I'm just curious to see how real this all is. It seems a lot of greenwashing. I'm just interested to see how real this all is. We've been putting in solar since the early 2000s. Pretty much NYSERDA's put us out of business because they're into the big arrays now, and we can't get financing for that kind of thing. We're not a big bank company. We're not aligned with the banks, and NYSERDA's very focused with the sun projects, which are fine. I'm all for that. And again, is this committee going to, try and get the COPAC, the Hecate pushed through instead of looking at full page ads advertising against big solar, because I don't want it in my backyard.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Jody. I'll have
I can go on and on.
Yeah, no, I know, and we all can. We will have an opportunity to go on about these things in detail, either by committee or as a group, and they're all very.
I mean, you're about to talk about, the solar chargers. A solar charger is $600. To spend $15,000 to put a solar charger that's online in is again a waste of energy, time, and money. When, for $15,000, you could put in a hell of a lot more of $600 chargers, especially if you're giving the electricity away like they do in Chatham. It doesn't have to go on the internet. Anyway.
Again, Jody, these are discussion points, and they're important perspectives and experiences. So let's move forward right now and get back to these points when we're making decisions as to how we prioritize the work that we want to do. We're not jumping into anything. And remember that the way this works is we are essentially an advisor to the Board of Supervisors as a group, and that that's a draft, and we'll make recommendations to the Board of Supervisors that are informed by our expertise and our research. And hopefully we can have these broader discussions and winnow down on these concerns, which I think are real. So let's move forward right now and get into it. We have about 15 minutes now to talk about scope of work. Now, I put together a document which I sent around. It's also the link. The Google Doc is in the chat. So if you want to pull it up, you can. And this is just to kind of give us a little bit of structure right now to think about where we're at and how we move forward. It's not a prescription for what we do or what we recommend to the Board of Supervisors. But the first action in Climate Smart is to organize a task force. So we've done that. congratulations. Actually, the first action is maybe the resolution. But so we can move forward from that. And the second is to appoint a coordinator. It's part of the PE1 set of actions, kind of getting yourself organized as a task force. We have an interim coordinator, I suppose, in me. But the vision, I think, is that we would hopefully get to a point quickly where we can hire someone to play this role more formally and provide assistance to the towns and the city of Hudson in their area around the county. We'll get back to that at the end. And then the next point in the initial PE1 is to identify national and regional climate partnership opportunities. These are all pretty straightforward, and we can organize ourselves with MOUs to certain relevant organizations, and then ultimately get credit for some of these. And folks on the call in New Lebanon and elsewhere, I'm sure, have experience in that. And we should really, not now, but get into a discussion of how we partner with our towns, what other organizations, and formalize some of those relationships that will be beneficial to the work. And then, of course, partnerships with local entities, which is what I just said. So I'm going to pause there. That's the kind of initial organizing of the work that allows us to do the substantive work. And Jody, I think there's a lot of evidence that, and many examples throughout the state, that this program leads to very tangible, specific actions on the ground that are very real and have impact. Otherwise, I wouldn't be involved, and I know a lot of people on the call here wouldn't be involved. It would be a waste of time. So hopefully you see that as we continue to work together. Let me pause there and see if anyone has any initial thoughts. I mean, that's just kind of the administrative side of things, exhaustive, so I wanted to kind of more brainstorm, start a process of brainstorming what we could be focusing on.
David, I had a question. So are we talking about assistance to become climate smart certified, or can we do a countywide, say, bronze certification?
I think both.
We can do both. Okay, just want to be clear on that.
Well, I know both. I think that's what we should do. We should focus on, it's reflective of our style of government here, which is decentralized. Right. And so I think we should kind of parallel that, where we have a role to play at the county level, and there are certain county-specific actions that will be more relevant. And then there are certain things that we can do less effectively as a county and more effectively by coordinating the efforts in the towns. And we've also heard from a lot of folks that are involved in CACs and in these climate smart and clean energy programs in their towns that they would like to see more coordination, more sharing of information, some collaboration among the towns to help us better coordinate our efforts. Mm-hmm. So I'd like to see both.
Yeah, I'm for that. I think, as I mentioned to you earlier, I think community choice aggregations is something that might be very appropriate for this group to consider. It's a huge topic, but just want to kind of throw that thought out there.
Can you give us a 30-second explanation of what community choice?
Yeah, I'm no expert, but essentially it's towns banding together to create buying power to basically allow for a situation in which your first choice option as an energy buyer, as a household, would be renewables. And the idea is to both expand the use of renewables and also hopefully to save towns money. And this can only be done on a town level. So the first step would be towns passing the resolution. But at the same time, towns need to work together to make this work. And anybody who's more expert wants to give another 30 seconds on that. But
I think the problem with that is that the default is that you're in, and if people are not interested, they have to opt out. And that was the reason we didn't pursue it in our town. Maybe some other towns it's not an issue, but the fact that the default is that you opt in may be a problem for certain towns.
Were there objections to that?
Well, we just didn't even consider it.
Okay, all right.
I just wanted to throw out there, and I think Dan, you've been in conversation with Jeff Demansky, who's actually one of our subcontractors. He's a an expert in CCA, and I think it would be a good opportunity. I can organize a presentation from Jeff just on CCA generally to this group if that's something that you're interested in.
Wendy.
Is the issue for Columbia County with CCA the fact that there's NYSEG and whatever, two different energy companies covering the county?
It wouldn't be prohibitive. It would make the bidding process a little bit more complicated for the administrator that you choose to go with, but that wouldn't stop you from doing it.
It seems if this is a town initiative, not a county initiative.
Yeah, David.
Yeah,
Bill. In the village, they passed a resolution to join the capital CA program. And as far as the opt-out, opt-in, the Mega was the people who presented the program to us, and they did a number of public meetings explaining things to folks. I think that Dan explained very well, what the idea is. You want to go 100% green as far as this CCA, the Climate Smart program goes, and the CEC program is to do 100% renewable. And our board was very positive about that. They've passed it as that would be their option. Unfortunately, now there's a problem with the pricing between fossil fuel and green energy, and there's going to be some more information, I think, soon in May, Omega, about where we stand with that capital region conglomerate.
Thanks for that. And district.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I want to say that I think this is not something the county should focus on. It's not a county initiative. It's a town by town, a town like New Lebanon. It was not something, even with a very democratic board and very focused on this thing. We in our community are very focused on not any actions that force someone into something or that they have to actively opt out. But I think it's a town by town thing. And I think that Jill and Tara can certainly help, individual towns' climate task forces if they're interested in finding out more. But I would suggest that we as a county kind of take it off the radar, because it's not something we would do at a county level. And I think that Jill and Tara would be there to support any towns who might want to move forward with it. That's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's table it now. Oh, Kara has a comment. And then
just real quickly, just to give everybody a heads up, the Public Service Commission, DPS, is releasing white papers and opening for public comments on CCAs. It's kind of a work in progress, if you will. So there's several unknowns in regards to how this will, morph over the coming months. Just to keep that in mind, there's several unknowns in regards to CCAs.
I'm curious whether any counties have done it. I was under the impression that at least part of Westchester County had successfully launched a CCA program. Jill, can you go with Tara?
Yeah, so you're right. There is a Westchester CCA that exists. They basically kind of they were actually the pilot CCA for the entire state. So they kind of came together as a county and kind of did this under Sustainable Westchester, which is an organization down there. So yes, they did it, but it wasn't. I think it was organized by Sustainable Westchester to keep it at a county level to kind of get everyone regionally, but it didn't need to be done, by the county, basically.
Yeah, perhaps we'll look at this obviously and follow it. And thanks for all the information, everyone. Perhaps we play an informational role of support to the counties here and making sure that we're informed and we can help them be informed to the towns. As they consider this. So let's just touching on a few other things in the next 10 minutes. That we Supervisor Knott already commented on the review and documentation of historical countywide clean energy efficiency initiatives. There are others as well. I think that was electrical efficiency, if I'm with SmartWatt, but there are other energy HVAC kind of projects that I think have occurred. So we should have a document that I think describes all of the historical work, and to see whether any of that would help us qualify for points that we could enter in under the Climate Smart program. We had talked about that early on before this task force was started. The Clean Energy Communities program, I'd like to spend a couple minutes on, because there are grants, there are high priority actions that allow us to join the program. And if we could do that, we could get a $5,000 grant very quickly. CPACE is a program that I don't really understand, but I know that we're registered as a county, so we can talk about that later, but we've checked that box for the purposes of this discussion. The clean energy we've talked about, which is if we can demonstrate a reduction in energy, and we need to do benchmarking as well, which sounds like a paperwork exercise, not necessarily insignificant, but something we can do to correspond to the work that Supervisor Knott and SmartWatt is already working on with support from Jill and Tara and their team. The clean energy campaigns is something else that we talked about before in terms of getting a scoping document together on the community solar projects that are already happening at the town level, so we can correlate with those efforts, or cooperate and get credit once 25 people are signed up under any one of those, subsequent to the scoping document being finalized, as far as I understand it. So that seems like a high priority as well. And green fleets and EV charging would allow us to, and I don't know what that means exactly. So maybe Jill and Tara could talk about a little bit more about what we need to do for that high priority action, and also for the campaign. We talked a little bit about that already, but maybe you could talk about how the campaign would work with, not with community solar, but with EV charging or other efficiency programs, as you mentioned, would be possible.
Sure. So the Clean Fleets High Impact Action is an easy one. So I'll answer that first. In order to get credit for that high impact action, the county just needs to install one EV charging station, excuse me, in the entire county. So there are tiered levels for points for Clean Fleets. You can get additional points if the county purchases an electric vehicle, either light, medium, or heavy duty. But really the entry level points for the Clean Fleets action is to just install a charging station. That can just be a level 2 dual port charging station, which it sounds like we're going to hear about later on. The community campaigns, as I mentioned before, there are several different technologies that can be promoted through these campaigns. I would say the easiest being community solar, and then there are 3 other options. One is electric vehicles. So that's not necessarily charging stations, that's actual electric vehicles. So in order to get credit for that one, you would promote a campaign encouraging residents to purchase electric vehicles. In order for the county to get credit, you would have the county residents purchase an electric vehicle. The next technology that we're promoting is clean heating and cooling. So this one's a little bit unique in that the Capital District Regional Planning Commission also has a contract with NYSERDA for a Heat Smart campaign. So that's essentially exactly what I've just described, but on a region level. So we have already vetted installers who install air source and ground source heat pumps, as well as do energy efficiency upgrades. So we could partner there so that the county could encourage residents and local businesses to install air source and ground source heat pumps, as well as doing energy efficiency upgrades. So you would have to have 25 installs to get credit for that community campaign. And the last technology, which I'll just touch upon briefly because NYSERDA has indicated that they're going to amend the regulations around this one, so I'm hesitant to encourage it at this point, is the demand response technology. So as it is currently written, the county could get credit for this if 25 individuals sign up for either a demand response program, they install battery storage in their home, or they install a smart thermostat. So those are the campaigns the county can do. One technology if they want, they can do all four if they want. You can submit one scoping document for all four technologies. And I'll stop there.
And one question, which I don't think we really have time for, there are probably many questions, is what does it mean to campaign? I mean, to do a scoping document is one thing, but what type of efforts do we do? I mean, we need to get 25 signups, so we somehow need to communicate and then track who's signing up. But what's involved in that? And I think maybe this becomes more of a subgroup that wants to take this on to look at, clean energy subgroup or something like that. But I don't know if you have a short answer, Jill, for that.
I do, and I would encourage a subcommittee, and there's already a handful of experts on this Climate Smart Task Force who are already doing this in their own towns. But short answer, webinars, tabling at farmers markets, partnering with local businesses, putting flyers up for the EV car. You could do a ride and drive event. Really just promote events. And because of COVID right now, we're seeing a lot of these happen online, and that's fine.
Thank you very much.
This is Terrence, not to detract us, but I think also, David, what's your question is how do we make sure we're catching private transactions? Because I guess that's my question. How do we know people have bought the electric cars or switched over their energy to smart devices?
That's a good question. With the community solar campaigns, that partnership with the community solar company that you choose to work with, they will give you a spreadsheet of the people who have signed up for the campaign. Clean heating and cooling, we have our own tracking system. We have a website where you sign up, and we use Airtable, and we track all that information. Electric vehicles is a little bit trickier. This campaign structure is unprecedented, and we're still kind of working through the kinks on that. So we need to establish relationships with dealerships and have them agree to give us that information. So ideally, that's how that would work. We haven't seen it in practice yet, though.
Great. And then it's not just a $5,000 grant, that would be for signing up, but there are opportunities for much more significant grants under the Clean Energy program, which were announced, 4 or 5 months ago, the latest round. So we'll get back to that, maybe a subcommittee in next steps, we'll talk about that. We have one more minute before Ron joins us, Ron Semp, to talk about EV, but some other ideas just generally to run through that could be part of our scope of work would be organizing, which I think came up earlier between the climate smart committees at the town level, the conservation advisory councils, and the clean energy groups. We certainly need to coordinate who's who and make sure that people have a way to communicate and finding out what has occurred and what is occurring now, what projects are being worked on, and where are there potential synergies among different people in the county who are working on similar things, so we can share resources and capacity. That, I think, could yield all sorts of fun, interesting projects, but that takes work in organizing and outreach. So prioritize the actions. So we need to go through the Climate Smart program and look at which actions are most relevant for us as a county and our towns and our communities, and which ones do we want to work on, where we can actually make progress, to Jody's point, where we're not just shuffling paper around, but we're actually getting things done on the ground. And there's some ideas here. We're going to have a broader discussion, and maybe we can get back to that after Ron gives us a presentation. We're going to talk for about Ron Semp, 15 minutes. Ron is a friend, or Catamount. That's how we met. But it turns out he's also the director of commercial sales at Plug-in Stations Online, and has a lot of experience in figuring out the financing for both installations and operational costs of EV chargers. Ron, are you with us? I can't see.
I'm here, Dave. Thanks for the invite and the intro. I appreciate it.
Sure.
So I didn't have a PowerPoint or anything prepared for today, so I figured we'd just kind of have a conversation. So certainly it's an open dialogue. If you have any questions, just shout. So again, my name is Ron Semp. I work for Plug-in Stations Online. We're based in Columbia County in Volusia, New York. As a side note, we just started on the Volusia power plant, hydroelectric power plant right in town. So that's been a year or more in the making. So we're really excited about that. But back to our core business. We develop and install commercial and municipal electric vehicle charging infrastructure all across New York and New England. We've done a lot of work and continue to do work with municipalities, not only in Columbia County, but in like I said, in the greater area as well. Essentially, what we do, we provide a turnkey service, so we can help with site design planning. We can consult with municipalities to suggest how many charging stations make sense, what locations make sense. Put together a basic site design to help to be able to get power to the charging site and get the stations up and running. One of the things that we also offer as part of our services is to assist towns and commercial end users with the various rebate processes and incentives. So in New York State, there are two basic, I don't want to say two, there's lots of grants and incentives out there, but the primary incentive sources that we work with are with the power utility. In most cases in Columbia County, it's National Grid, but there's some NYSEG territory as well. So the power utilities will essentially pay for 90% of the infrastructure that goes in the ground to bring power to the charging stations on both sides of the meter, whether it's or the customer side of the meter. And then we also work with NYSERDA on rebates that come after the project has been completed. So essentially, particularly for municipal projects, there's very little net out of pocket. Most of the project cost is being covered through those. There are other incentive sources too, and one of them being DEC. I'm not sure if their program is back up and running, but that program we've used as well. The grant process is a little more onerous, but you can cover more of the expenses associated with charging there. So if you have internal grant writers or engage with a grant writer, that's probably the time to that program. You're probably going to need some support there on the administrative side.
Ron, can you just give us a quick, I see Kara's hands up too, but can you just give us a quick example of, let's say we wanted to put a charging station in Hudson, how we would use these programs to pay for, just give us an example and whether we could actually get this done with zero municipal dollars.
Right. So it's possible. We have done a cost neutral projects in the past. How to get it done really starts with a site design and a site consult. Bringing, I'd love you to bring us out, but there's other companies that do what we do as well. But bring somebody out who understands the industry, knows what the ins and outs are, what from a practical standpoint, what's a good spot to put a charging station and how many. And then after that site visit, the contractor or project developer like us will have what we need in order to put some budget numbers together, whether it's a budgetary estimate or a real estimate. We ought to be able to get some budget figures around that. And then what we would do is see how that interacts with the rebates and incentives to see where it shakes out. Just like anything else, there's various levels of quality and price points as it relates to EV charging. So our company in particular is agnostic. We can recommend essentially any qualifying piece of equipment, but we've done this enough to know which ones are good and which ones you want to avoid. So we'll make some recommendations. There's equipment. It's probably it absolutely is the largest network in the country and in the area. EV drivers are looking for it. The stations are high quality. That comes with a cost. So there might be some cost share if you're going towards the higher end of the equipment. On the equipment side, there might be some cost share for the municipalities. We could take it down sort of another level to a mid-range charger and structure the deal so that it's more of a cost neutral situation. When I say cost neutral, means there is going to be some upfront costs, and some of that comes back to the station owner in the form of a rebate. And then there's also operating costs that are associated with the network. All the stations are going to be connected to a charging network through the cloud, and that gives the station owner the ability to collect payments for use of the station. So that is an operating cost there, but it's a recoverable operating cost through collecting money for the use of the station. So depending on the program, there's different rules. There's the DEC program requires you to offer free charging for a certain amount of time. The other programs I mentioned from the utility and NYSERDA don't have any requirements like that. So was that a good answer to your question, Dave?
It's
Sorry,
great.
a little long-winded.
It's great. And this is just an overview. Does anyone else have any questions? I've got a couple more before we move on. Supervisor Knott. You're on mute. We can't hear you, Ron.
Hi, Ron. This is Ron Knott from the county. We had spoke last year on this project, and finances weren't looking good at that point in time, so we didn't make any progress. I have identified, one good location the county has got is in a parking lot at 560 Warren Street, which is our Department of Motor Vehicles building. And that's a public parking lot, and we do have a little building in the corner of that has electric, and I think that we could easily do some EV charging stations right there, and make them available to the participants that come to DMV, which might be beneficial, or to the city. But I also, with the recent developments of electric cars for the county leases a number of cars through an enterprise program. And we had looked at this more than a year ago, and the price just wasn't there to make it work. But it seems to be getting more attractive now, maybe as we go forward. But that would also require the county to have some infrastructure in order to be able to have some of our lease cars plugged in too. So I need to talk to you more about that someday. Supervisor Guzzi from Livingston kind of oversees that enterprise lease program, along with some staff from our controller's office, and we'd like to talk further. One of the other questions I have for you, just to throw that out there, I'm glad to talk to you. You come highly recommended, but do we need to bid this process out if there's an expense to the county for this?
So that's up to you, but there's something that there is some state contract pricing available through ChargePoint, as well as through Greenlots, who's a network provider that also provides some hardware as well. We're listed, Plug-in Stations is listed on both of those state contracts. The equipment itself and the network and the installation of the equipment on a prepared site. All of that we can offer state contract pricing, and that may help to avoid a RFP situation. The electrical work that goes into bringing power to the charging site, we don't have any pre-negotiated state contract pricing for that. So that's something that each individual municipality would have to decide whether or not it requires a bid process.
Great. A couple more questions real quick. We only have a short kind of introduction to the topic. Bill Mancini and then
Okay, Ron, I spoke, I'm David, maybe you can help me too with this, because I spoke with our economic department in the village about possibility of putting additional charging. We have a charging station in a municipal lot right now, but about putting additional stations at some commercial sites. There's a new restaurant being renovated and opening sometime this summer, and I saw there was some grant opportunities, or at least the National Grid offered to do the infrastructure work. Was that offered as well to commercial and municipalities, or just the municipal?
Yes, the short answer is yes. The NYSERDA charge ready rebate, as well as the make ready program offered by the utilities, are offered to commercial and municipal customers. The DEC program is designed specifically for municipalities.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Supervisor Collins, and I think Supervisor, and then I think we may have to move on.
Hey, Ron, Denal Collins here. Are the components expected to be any more robust in the future? We have a charge point head, and we just had to replace it again for a cost of $1,100. And from what the technicians I've talked to, and I'm sorry if I digress with this conversation, the technicians I talked to are projecting like a 1.5 year lifespan for these components. Are we going to look to have anything more robust in the future?
I think that, it depends on the manufacturer. I think at this point, some of the problems that we've had have been with the network and the components that talk to the cloud through a cellular network were designed for 3G and 4G. Anything new that's coming out and your replacement, I'm assuming you got a head replaced on your charger, that's going to be compatible with the LTE networks, which are by design can upgrade as the cellular networks. So I don't expect to see that issue that we've seen over the past year as these networks have moved towards LTE. In terms of component quality, we're giving a 10-year lifespan on a lot of the stations that, when we figure out total operating costs and things like that, we're giving it a 10-year effective useful life. And the warranties out of the box kind of have a wide range. It really just depends on the equipment or quality of the equipment. But the problems that we've seen haven't necessarily been component quality issues, have been more network issues that are being resolved.
Great, thank you. And then last question, and then we're going to move on, is Supervisor Huffling. You have a question or a comment? I saw your hand before, but maybe not.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Any last thoughts before we say goodbye to Ron? Thank you so much for joining us for a very quick kind of intro, and we'll certainly be back in touch.
Great, thanks, Dave. I appreciate everybody's time and the opportunity.
All right.
Have a great day.
One thing that would be I think personally advisable would be some sort of analysis of the county and figuring out a gap analysis of where the EV charging stations currently exist. And I mean, this is available online. It's very easy to access. Some sort of analysis. I don't think it needs to be professionally done. I think the folks living in the county here could kind of look at a map and again, maybe a subcommittee come up with some ideas as to where we might target some of these stations, and then working with those towns or business owners that where those locations are to try to identify specific locations. I don't know if there are any last thoughts on this before we move on to the exciting news that I foreshadowed earlier. Yeah.
I have a general question, and this may be addressed after the exciting news. I think a lot of these things that we're talking about, like you said, really do have subcommittees, subgroups. Is that like a next meeting thing? I think a lot of the work is going to be done, with like Jill said, there's some expertise on this group for certain things like energy use tracking. And could we, you know, maybe not this meeting, maybe next meeting, define what are those subcommittee groups, what are first kind of project you want to research and present, and then create these subgroups, because I feel like it's a big group here. We only have an hour and a half once a month. I think a lot of the legwork, you know, so that at the next full meeting of this committee, each subgroup can do a report. Okay, we dug into, you know, EV charging stations. Here's what we found. Is that on the agenda?
Yeah, that's what we're going to spend the next half hour doing, basically that and this news, which kind of dovetail together. So I'll just say it. We've been able to secure funding for a full-time supervisor position for 2 years. So we have at least $85,000 a year for 2 years, which would be a full-time person, which is not necessarily the junior coordinator that we were thinking, but it could be someone here, depending on how we do this. We have talked to the Land Conservancy, and they are very open to hosting this position and would put some in-kind contributions, could be significant into that. So we, in terms of next steps, as a group, we need to decide whether we want to, well, I certainly think we should pursue this, but there may be some dissenting voices that disagree, and we should get that out. If we agree, next steps would be a job description and a subcommittee to work on identifying a short list of candidates that this task force could review and ultimately interview. So we have a process that we have to work out that is agreeable, and then we would make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors, of course, before we move forward. So that's a lot of news and a lot of ideas packed into one little moment. So are there any thoughts or concerns to start with about moving forward with a plan like this, where we would have a partnership with a county nonprofit, which has been done in other places? There are other ways of doing this, but in recognition of two things. One is the hesitancy and concern, real budget concerns at the county level of bringing on another staff person at the county, and also so sensitivity there, and also an opportunity, frankly, to kind of leverage existing resources and expertise at another one of our leading organizations in the county. Now, this person wouldn't be managed by CLC as far as the initial discussions have been on this. We envision this person being managed by this task force. There's a lot to work out, but we have a great opportunity here, and I think we could. A lot of this work in between meetings that Supervisor Huffling was talking about that needs coordination and kind of ongoing support will maintain momentum with, I think we all need to figure out how we can play roles on those committees and do real work as well. But otherwise, I think we'll be on a much slower pace. But Supervisor Huffling, you have a comment.
I think it's phenomenal. I am extremely excited. Two questions. One, is it public as to where this funding is coming from? Is it the CLC that's offering the funding?
Yeah, so the part of it is coming from CLC, is a commitment to climate work, and part of it is coming from Lifeboats, which is the organization that has been sponsoring. They've offered a commitment of $35,000 a year for 2 years. We have to submit an application, but it sounds like we would certainly get it, or not certainly, we would almost certainly get it. That comes from the New World Foundation, so they're fiscally sponsored by the New World Foundation, so that's where that funding comes from.
Well, that's amazing, and I want to give a sincere thank you to both of those organizations. And my other question, just for clarification, so my understanding, and it sounds like there will be a subgroup that work out all the details, but they won't be a county employee, so we won't have any of the HR or payroll or any of that. They will be an employee of one of these groups, yet we as a committee will be kind of their boss, so to speak, as far as, work plan and all of that. And I would assume with Terrence being here from the CLC, that gives them an oversight there. And maybe if Lifeboat also wanted, I feel like those organizations should have some oversight or say. And so maybe Terrence from the CLC, and if Lifeboat was interested and wanted to add one more person to this, really the one giving kind of the tasks. Am I understanding that correctly, that they would be an employee of the other organizations, but yet we would be able to kind of give them their marching orders, so to speak? Okay.
That's how
awesome.
That's how I'm discussing it with these potential partners. That's my expectation. That's how I understand it. That's how I think it would be functional and accountable. But I don't know if I'd like to hear from others on where on this opportunity.
So David,
Supervisor
I just chip in, and I know we've spoke on this before, and I'm happy to see a coordinator. I know we need one, but I'm just trying to make sure that it stays isolated from county. If you're not going to run this money through the county, we are a county sponsored organization here, this Climate Smart Committee, but then you're talking about putting the money elsewhere. I just want to make sure that it stays separated. I don't know, have you already tracked with the potential administrator that we could have the county attorney's office review and make sure that it's separated?
Yeah, well, certainly we need to go through all proper legal reviews and make sure all of our T's are crossed and I's are dotted. But we haven't gotten that far. I mean, this is what we've done is we've talked to the potential partner in CLC, gotten their support, and they're really, on board. So I had a few conversations with Troy Weldy, the president there, and they're committed as an organization to climate work, and they see this as an opportunity to collaborate with the county. They understand the relationship that we've just described in terms of management and accountability, but the money would go to CLC to hire this person. They would be an employee of CLC and not an employee of the county, but they'd be accountable to this task force with some. We have to have a memorandum of understanding, which can obviously scrutinized by the lawyers, but which would have to get to this issue of what type of day-to-day, if at all, the organization CLC and perhaps the funding partner Lifeboats would have. So there are some certainly present back to this committee before we, or this task force before we move forward with anything. That legal review.
Great. And I think you said it in the beginning, David, but I just wanted to reiterate that, this group is, although we've got a number of supervisors on here, we are an advisory group to the Board of Supervisors. So any policy changes or expenditures that the committee wants to propose are going to come back through a committee at the county, whether it be county government or public works, or some committee will bring them to the Board of Supervisors for that process. There is a process to get any changes like that made. So we can all work together on that, but just so we understand the process.
Yeah, I mean, I envision this moving forward as a job description as the next step, which we would then review as a task force, and then an MOU or some contractual agreement that we would draft but not finalize with CLC, an application to Lifeboats to make sure this funding is real and available, which I believe it is. But just to secure it as a commitment. And then a package that we would then present to the Board of Supervisors saying we would like to go forward now and execute this and hire someone. And then we would go through a recruitment process. We could have a subcommittee that helps to identify candidates, and then those candidates would be vetted by this task force. And it would be ideal if the Board of Supervisors authorizes us to actually make a decision and hire the person as a group. But if we have to go back to them, we can do that too.
Hey, David, just a suggestion too. It sounds like this isn't the first time this has happened. So I wonder if Jill or others might be able to reach out to some other counties that might have an outside agency hiring someone. And instead of creating the MOU from the ground up, maybe we can, utilize some other county that's already done this in their documentation.
I'm not aware of any, I know of some county sustainability coordinators, but they're employed by the county. I can reach out to contacts across the state to see if they have a similar example, but maybe Tara has some more insight than I do.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, I'm the same situation. I know like Ulster County has a sustainability coordinating staff, but I know that they're actually employed by the county. So, but yeah, we have that we can touch base with to see.
Is Westchester County a climate smart county?
They are, but I don't know what their staffing looks like at the county.
They work very closely with Sustainable Westchester, Nina Orville, so it could be that that might be a good place to find some information.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, we can reach out to our Hudson Valley colleagues and see.
Michael O'Hara had his hand up.
Yeah, the city of Kingston has for many years used outside funding for their sustainability and outdoor recreation coordinator, Julie Noble, and before that, both Nobles worked on the city staff, but both paid entirely by outside funders.
Right. I'm talking to Julie the week after next, so I'll get more information on that. And that's right. There is an opportunity to have a tax deductible contribution, a charitable contribution, go directly to a municipality as well, with a letter from the IRS, as far as I understand it, but as opposed to a 501c3 nonprofit. But that's about all I know about that. But I don't think that's our preference here, because we don't want this to be an employee of the county. Michael, did you have another hand?
No, just an accident.
Okay, you're just putting your hand down.
Yes.
Thanks. Any other thoughts here? Any thoughts on the next steps that I outlined? Because I can take the initiative on that, which is drafting a job description and an MOU that we can review. Okay, I see. Yeah. Okay, I see acquiescence, tacit approval, no objections. Good. So I'll move forward on that. We have 15 minutes. We need to schedule a regular meeting, and then we need to talk about next steps in terms of next steps in terms of start just moving forward with some of this work, subcommittee work, as we get organized. I think we have an obvious area of focus that's arisen here. But Supervisor Knott, did you have something else to add?
Yes, I did. I should have introduced this in the beginning, but you remember when we formed this task force, we had reached out to a number of supervisors asking if they had people in their towns, and that's how a lot of us got here. Following when we did that actual appointment, I did later hear from Supervisor Beery from Germantown, and he wanted to recommend that Matthew Mercier, if I'm saying that correctly, be appointed to this task force. So I told him I would bring that to the formed committee and see how everybody feels about that. I know we're getting to have a large group, but we want all the strength we can get, I guess. So.
Well, I think that's great. We have a lot of work to do, and if we have subcommittees, we need more people to do that work. So are there other people in the county that maybe we've overlooked that would be, we can't have an unlimited, number of people, obviously, but if there's one or two other people that we want, we get back to the Board of Supervisors to get the group changed or expanded. So we don't want to do it individual by individual. If we can make a decision on a couple people, if there are people out there. Supervisor Huffling.
I would maybe reach out to this LIFE, but whatever the other organizations are that's going to be funding it. Terrence is here from the CLC, but if we're going to do one amendment to the membership, I would make that as part of the conversation, since they're funding the position. Potentially, would they want to have one of their members on this committee? And that's the only one I can think of.
I think that's a great idea, and I'll do that, unless there's objection for some reason, we can discuss. Okay. Just looking, don't see anything. We could use the last Thursday of every month from 10 to 11:30 and try to fix a time. That would be, I think, ideal. Does that work for folks? And if that does, wow, that would be really great.
Last Thursday.
I mean, obviously we'll have conflicts here or there individually, but if that works now, would that work as just a standing meeting? These meetings are recorded, and I believe transcripts are automatically created. Is that right, Oswaldo?
Yep, that's correct.
So anyone that misses a meeting can watch it or look at the transcript. Does anyone object to making that our time?
Sounds good to me.
Sounds good.
That's excellent. So there we go. And we have.
And just to clarify, David, it's not the fourth Thursday of the month, it's the last Thursday. So if there happens to be a fifth Thursday, it's going to fall on that fifth one.
Yeah, I think the last makes the most sense, even though it means that we may have one fewer meeting over the year or two, just because it's easier to track for people.
Okay.
I don't know if it's easier. People can count either way, but let's do the last, I think. And we'll send out an invite, calendar invite, so it gets put onto your calendars. Okay, so we have a few more minutes, 12 minutes or so, and we want to talk about next steps and not lose momentum. And there are some really great opportunities, I think, that are right in front of us now. And I think they are kind of focused within the clean energy communities work for the most part. What we've talked about, Supervisor Knott is already working with SmartWatt and trying to track all of that information on the historical energy efficiency programs that have been implemented, and we'll have that information, it looks like, soon. And there's a second step I don't think is being undertaken right now yet, which is benchmarking. So looking back, and we need some advice on exactly how that should be done, and we can consult the website and Jill and Tara as well. But that's some, work, getting electric utility bills for all the buildings and documenting that in a spreadsheet. There's the Green Fleets program, which we spoke of, and the requirement to qualify for joining clean energy communities, and that $5,000 grant would be one EV charging station. Sounds like there's an interest in putting one in Hudson. We could initiate a process, whether putting it out to bid or starting to work with Mr. Semp, or we could have a committee explore that and say, okay, we want to look at two things. One is an initial EV charging station in Hudson, so that we can qualify for this grant and join the program with a high priority action, but also look at maybe the county as a whole, and where do we have these gaps in the EV charging infrastructure that we might want to pursue as more of a long-term project. And then there's the campaigns. And the campaigns would require some work, scoping document, and I know Jill and Tara are terrific, and their team will work with us on that, but we'll have to be involved in that. So and that's a lot of great stuff. The campaign thing is great because it allows us to be public and be out there as a task force pretty quickly and be promoting some of this. So I see Steve Powers has his hand up.
And, and as part of all this, and these are great ideas here too, we might consider one of the action items is establishing a social media presence. So, and that can be used to promote these different activities as well.
Yeah.
So that could be setting up a Facebook page or group, whatever, at the county level, just to get the word out about what we're planning to do.
So, knowing that we're all very busy people and we're all volunteers, do we have folks that are excited to spend some time together developing these ideas, or are there other things that we should be focusing on as a higher priority right now? Dan Haas, sorry, I missed your hand.
Oh, no, this is a different question. When we're talking about benchmarking, do we mean for county buildings, or are we looking at each individual town building?
We're looking at county buildings because
County buildings, okay.
Is that right, Supervisor Knott?
Yes, and I am working on collecting some of that information, and I realize that unlike our towns, this is a much bigger project, but there's a lot bigger energy bills here too, so yes, I am working on that with just county buildings at this point in time.
Okay. All right, thanks.
John Bradley, hand.
Yes. This is sort of a footnote on the charging station. I don't know what the population of electric vehicles are in the county, but I do know that if you own one of the higher end vehicles like a Tesla, you don't have a charging station, a fast charging station in the county. And although that's not an issue for points for Climate Smart, in terms of the quality of life, and this is of interest to me because my son visits, and he can't charge his car in the county. I think there would be real value in also figuring out how do we get some Tesla charging stations in the county, because there are Tesla owners. Now, a lot of them have it on their own property, but there's a lot of tourists that come to this county. I just think that if somehow in the EV charging thing, we can facilitate that there be some fast charging stations in the county, that would be good for the industry, even though we won't get points for it.
Just a comment on that. The ZEV infrastructure rebate that Ron kind of danced around. I know Tistria at least is familiar with this process. That grant does cover 80% funding for DC fast chargers. So he kind of focused on the Charge Ready and the Make Ready grants that will cover funding for level 2 stations. But there is funding out there. It covers up to 80%. And actually, the new round of funding was just released, and that match depends on where the charging station location is. So it's actually between 20 and 0 for the match. But just so you know, I agree. I think first steps to get credit for the Clean Fleets High Impact Action, the easiest way is just that level 2 station. But if you are going to make a plan for the county moving forward, there is funding for fast chargers.
Very cool. Wendy Dwyer had her hand up.
Doesn't Tesla do their own stations?
Yeah, that's what I thought too. And there are a couple level 2 Teslas, like Hawthorne Valley has a couple. There may be some slower ones in the county that are Tesla.
It would seem to me that then the step would be to have some sort of contact with how they work, because that would help the county.
Yeah. So I mean, everyone agrees.
So I mean, I don't know what the process is, but that should be in the mix.
Yep. And this is part of the further exploration that I think a committee has to take on. Supervisor Hoffling, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I just had a suggestion. What if between now and our next meeting, you circulated all of the action items that the county could potentially focus on? And since we have such a large group, like I have interest in getting free stores throughout the county. That's been a huge hit in New Lebanon. And I've heard from many other towns, we would love to have a free store. I know there's a few out there. So like I have certain passions of mine that I'd like to serve on a subcommittee on. So my suggestion is distribute the list of action items. All the different task force members from different towns are going to know what they have expertise in, familiarity with, what worked well in their towns. And we actually come to the next meeting, instead of being like, these are the subcommittees, what do you want to serve on? We actually come to the next meeting with each of us bringing 1 to 3 subcommittees that we would like to see formed and serve on, and then form kind of the subcommittees from there. That's my suggestion. And I also would suggest that it sounds like there's potentially a lot of work, David, and I don't want you to take it all on, that if there's a few people on this call that are interested in helping you with getting what needs to get together for that hiring of the position, because I think that's like top priority is to get someone, overseeing all of that, that maybe that forms today even just a few volunteers that can assist you in whatever you need assistance in creating those documents, as well as Supervisor Knott. If you know, the whole idea of done so far can be a heavy workload. So if Ron, Supervisor Knott, wants any help, and there's others that are like, hey, what can we do? How can we help? Those are my suggestions.
I think they're all great, and we should follow them. In terms of the hiring subcommittee and developing, I would like another set of eyes or two to review before we go back to the and provide comments. I would really appreciate if Supervisor not to put you on the spot, but if you could if you could be one of those people, I'd like to share that with. If there's because we've had this ongoing discussion, and there's a need to be sensitive about the role between the county and whatnot. But if there's someone else that would like to help us on that has some experience with hiring, that would be great. And if not, that's fine too. We're going to come back to this group. I will circulate a group of, and you can email me if you feel like that and experience, that would be helpful. In terms of the actions, I will direct folks to the website, which has the actions listed out in detail. And I would just recommend that you look through that and identify those things for the next meeting that you think are top priorities that we should be working on. And we'll have a lot of time dedicated to that broader discussion where we can start prioritizing. This was no way, what I presented earlier, in no way a prescription. It was just to try to get the ball moving, knowing that not everyone has had a chance to look through. So that's a great idea. And then I do think there's room for ongoing clean energy work if there is a kind of maybe ad hoc or initial committee that wants to join in supporting the work that Supervisor Knott's already kicked off and following up on some of these threads. Not to say that the expectation is we'll get everything done but in a month, but if there's a group that wants to continue, and I'm happy to participate on that, in that as well. We can also wait if that's just too much for people and it's too fast. We can wait until next meeting and evaluate more broadly what we want to prioritize. Steve.
Yeah. So just to clarify, whatever is proposed still has to be approved by the supervisors, right?
Right.
Yeah. So we're looking at, if you make suggestions here or send out a proposal and people volunteer, are we going to accept this without having an in-person meeting? I mean, a virtual meeting? Or
about the committee, the idea of a committee continuing to kind of move forward to explore these topics and getting that approved by the Board of Supervisors first?
Right. So you're going to send out an email, have people volunteer for whatever subcommittees there are, right? And then are we going to vote on that at the next meeting? Or are we going to just propose?
The idea is not to have people volunteer for subcommittees before the next meeting, but just have the list of actions communicated out, let people on their own kind of look through the program more closely, identify what they believe are the priorities, where they may be interested in, serving or participating, and then we'll have a discussion. And yes, I'd like to have a vote or a consensus on where we move forward, or recommending, that these are our priority actions. There's a scope of work I envision for the task force that would be developed, and that certainly has to go to the Board of Supervisors. This is what we're working on. That's how to some extent, we're making it up as we go because this is new, but that's how I envision it. And, we'll get advice from the supervisors that are on this course to make sure that we're following the right protocols. Supervisor Knott.
Yes, I just to follow up on that procedure, I think this committee can do a lot of things amongst themselves as far as doing subcommittees and developing goals. My point earlier was any action that's going to require a policy change at the county or an expenditure by the county certainly needs to go back and go through full board for approval. But this committee, I think, this task force is free to work amongst themselves and make a number of decisions. I also wanted to just thanks for asking for people to help out with other things. But I wanted to say that in the June full board meeting at the county, I will be having our energy company come back and do a phase 2 of the energy project that we talked about before. We've been working on this for a number of years, and this is a very capital heavy project, but it addresses a lot of the energy consumptions at 2 of the more important buildings in the city down there, both 401 State Street and 560 Warren Street. So we're looking at trying to update the energy in those buildings along with some other improvements. So if you want to hear that, you're welcome to join that meeting.
That's great, and thanks for all that work you're doing, and you're making you've really spearheaded a lot of work in the county already on these fronts. So that's just really great. A couple more hands. I see Kara has her hand up, and then Wendy, and then Steve, and then we're out of time. We're already out of time, so thanks for hanging in a little late.
Hey, real quick question for Jill and Tara, if you're still on, about kind of this timing with some of the leadership campaigns and the finiteness of the funding that's available. So if you, with county action items, that would qualify under the larger city category, is that correct?
Yes.
Go ahead,
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So basically the larger the funding that would apply to the county, because you're considered a large community, is statewide. So it does it is a bit more competitive, but maybe not, because there's more grants, and as four counties are having a hard time getting to the larger grant numbers because of the number of actions that are available. And it is finite as far as when this program is done, it's done. But we don't anticipate that being for a couple years. I would say the more urgent action as far as the monies go is maybe the campaigns money. So as we talked about earlier, there's that $15,000 for the county to do a campaign, and that is also statewide. And there is a limited number of those, and a lot of communities have already submitted scoping documents and are moving that very quickly. So I would say that's the focus as far as timeliness goes.
Do you know, Tara, how many grants there are available for each campaign? I thought I saw 40 or something
There are
like
40 grants available for all of the campaigns for large municipalities. There is a tracking clock, I suppose, on the NYSERDA website. And I don't think any of those have been claimed at this point, but there are 40 for large municipalities and there are 100 for small municipalities.
Thank you. So yeah, it's important that we keep that timing kind of front and center.
Yeah, I mean, I would be great to have a group that's just going to focus on those clean energy items, but we may not be ready to do that at this meeting. So that preparing for that at the next meeting, because we have a lot of momentum in that area, and it seems like this is kind of low-hanging fruit. The EV charging station that would let us join the program would be a $5,000 grant, and this campaign would be one of our high priority actions to qualify, but also could trigger another grant, as far as I'm understanding. I don't know if it's 5,000 plus 15,000, but it could be. Is that right?
Yeah.
So that would be nice. It would be a nice win to do that. And then could we use the 15,000 as part of our funding for the campaign, or do we have to? Could we use those resources to support our outreach efforts?
And money is awarded after you get the signups. So.
Okay. So no, but that'll be nice to have at some point. Okay.
And we can do more than one campaign, right? So.
Right. Well, there's a lot of great energy here. I don't want to keep people past the time. We can make these meetings longer. So send me emails if you really object to that, to 2 hours, or you think that's a good idea. I think we have a lot to do, and a 2-hour meeting once a month is not much for all the work that we have to do. So maybe we just decide to do that now. Does anyone object to that? I know that our schedules are very busy, but this is super important. And if we can consolidate this into 2 hours, we scale it back once we have everything under control. I don't know when that'll be. let's go for 2 hours. If people can't hang in for 2 hours, there's the minutes and all that. So, but just a heartfelt thank you. This is great. And I'm very enthusiastic with what we can do together. So appreciate everyone.
Thanks for all of your hard work, David.
Okay, great. So we'll talk in a month and we'll communicate in between. Thank you.
Thank you, David.